Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today on a Monday. We are presented by Rally House. Dave Revson, Howard Griffith with you. We thought we'd get some questions answered this weekend, and did we ever?
Really an impressive weekend. I think there were some performances this week. We'll talk about Indiana Mendoza a little bit. But he really showed a lot. I mean, you talk about night and day, talking about the quarterback over Rutgers they had last year to this year. What a huge upgrade. Mendoza is the real deal and is really playing well.
Yeah, Curtis Rourke was pretty good too. So
right, and you just think
says something.
Yeah,
the guy finished in the top 10 in the Heisman, but they are really something, and that gets us to our big story. It is presented by Rally House. We look at the big board, giving us a look at the weekend that was. It started with Iowa's win on Friday. It did not end until the wee hours of Sunday morning, East Coast time, when USC finished up Michigan State. We can vouch for that. In between, we saw Indiana put that historic beatdown on the Illini, Michigan win at Nebraska, and the Ducks and the Huskies both picking up rivalry wins. Let's start with Indiana. I mean, it's pretty amazing. This is the most points a Big Ten team has ever scored against a top 10 opponent. And that goes back a long way. I mean, the AP poll's been going on since the 1930s. It's a historic win. It was every bit as lopsided as the final score, in my opinion. I mean,
it wasn't as close as the final score, right?
Like the rushing yards, 312 to 2. I mean, there's just some crazy stuff in this game. So let's unpack it. Let's start with Indiana. I think it's impossible to look at Indiana, Howard, for me, and say this is not a team that can win the Big Ten after seeing that.
And I want to pause right there just for a moment, because I also want to go back and let's just think about how this team has been developed, right? And I think I think we need to look at that, just how this has been constructed, going into the portal, getting the players. It's easy to go in the portal and throw money and say, I want this guy, this guy, this guy. But they have to be a fit. He continues to find guys that are fits, that elevate the program. And I don't know that most people have a true appreciation for it. Because when you think about Indiana, they're not necessarily going to they can go out and get whoever they want. They need to get the right person that's going to fit what their program is about. And that's hard to do. And I think you have to give this coaching staff, their personnel department, a lot of credit about how they are getting to this point. And then you have a performance like you had, and we'll go back to your question. It is just impressive the way they're playing, whether it's on the defensive side, whether it's special teams. I go back to this. He said Pons, when we first met, told us he's probably the best player on this team.
Right.
His Coach Zanetti lied to us about or just kind of said, kind of sugarcoated something or coach speak with us at all. He kind of tells us the truth, doesn't he?
He tells everyone the truth.
Everyone.
Yes.
Everyone. And I think we need to start paying attention to exactly what he's saying, because he knows what he's doing. His coaching staff, his players, they're unbelievable at what they're getting done. And the manhandling of Illinois this past weekend was just another step at what they want to go out and do.
This team is fabulous. I mean, a couple things. First of all, he made no bones in the postgame about saying, we looked at their offensive line, we looked what Duke did in that first half, and we said, we can do that. The difference is Duke gave the ball away a lot, and we're not going to do that. And so he was right on that. Their ability to run the ball, I mean, Lee Beebe's out for the year, and I was like, man, that might hurt them. I'm sure Lee Beebe would help them.
Right.
But I'm just saying, they didn't miss a beat. They go over 300 yards rushing again. Mendoza's incredible. I mean, he's thrown 3 incompletions over the last 2 weeks combined. He, in the post-game news conference, I don't know if you caught this, I was reading some of his post-game comments. He singled out both of his incompletions and talked about how disappointed he was in those passes and talked about each one of those passes. Like, when you can spend time in your post-game talking about all of your incompletions, it tells you how good a game you had. And I think it points out perfectionism is unachievable, of course, in sport, right? I mean, if for no other reason than there's someone trying to stop you from doing what it is you're trying to do. But perfectionism seems to be the goal. at Indiana, and it's from the top down, and they all believe we're going to go in and we're going to execute exactly what we want to do. And it would be tough to argue they didn't do that in this game. It was an amazing, amazing performance.
They took advantage of each and every one of the weaknesses Illinois had and may have shown in previous weeks. They took advantage of it. And that's what you want to be able to do when you sit there and you look and you scheme at what people are trying to do. They were able to run the football when they wanted to, control both lines of scrimmage. When it was time for them to throw it vertically, there was really no pressure was there. You talk about the receivers that were playing unbelievably. It really is fascinating to me. And each and every week, it's like, can he do more? Is there more out there? And it is. He keeps telling us that you can go out and make these plays. And it's crazy to think when you just think about where this program was 2 years ago.
Yeah, this is the losingest program in the history of major college football, as we talk about. Now, they did have the one, they actually had 2 pretty good years, right? They had the one year and then they followed up. They had the COVID year where they were in the top 10 in the country. So, I mean, it's not like it's been a total wasteland. But we all know the history of Indiana, and what he's done is utterly amazing. I do want to talk about Illinois. This was an opportunity game for Illinois. They're in the top 10. They spent a lot of the offseason talking about, hey, what about us? Why aren't people talking about us? Look at all the starters we got coming back. I think this is a crossroads now because you've got USC coming to town. This is also a high-profile game that people are excited about. It's homecoming. There's going to be a lot of national TV exposure. Big Noon is there. So it's a big game for Illinois. They've got to get back on track. I don't want to make excuses for them, but they were down 6 players in the secondary by the time the game was over between injuries, targeting, everything that went wrong in this game. But this was a missed opportunity in a huge way, and it's going to color the perception of people of this team for the rest of the year.
Well, that's one of the things that happens in sport, right? You know, people are going to talk about you, tell you how great you are, all these wonderful things, but you still have to be able to meet the challenge each and every week. And the challenge was not met. And I thought the coaching staff and Bert Bielema in particular just stepped up and said, hey, we just weren't good. We didn't get it done. And that's what you have to do. When these types of situations, the tape doesn't lie. So you have to embrace what it was that you put on tape, and now they have to figure out a way to get going again. It won't be hard because of the taste that they have in their mouth after this past weekend. But this is a USC team that's playing really well.
And can get after the quarterback.
Yes, so that's going to be a constant theme, right, until you stop it. When you're susceptible to a blitz or a certain style of a blitz or a certain play, this is a copycat league. They're going to go and try to duplicate that same thing because they're like, if you couldn't pick it up last week, do we think we're going to find out if you learned anything from the tape? We're going to try some of those same type of blitzes. But it wasn't blitzes that were getting them. They were being outplayed. These were one-on-one battles that they were losing, so they have to now look within, internalize that, and try to get better because SC is coming. They feel really good about themselves right now. And you just talked about, just getting after the passer. This is an offense that can put up some points as well.
Yes, so the issues in the secondary, I mean, you don't want to go up against the most efficient passer in the country, but that's what you got.
That's what you got.
With Jade Mayama coming to town. So, yeah, there's a lot to be concerned about, but lots of opportunities ahead because you got USC, Purdue's not going to be easy the next week. You got Ohio State, so
they're still in control.
They can prove this isn't who we were, but man,
somewhere in the middle, right?
It was a big step back. Okay, the other measuring stick game to me was Michigan, Nebraska, where we were going to find out about each one of these teams. I thought Michigan sent a really clear message. They went in, they ran the heck out of the football. I mean, they gashed Nebraska.
Huge plays.
I think people were quick to say, hey, maybe Michigan's a year away, and they may be. I mean, the Oklahoma game, I think, gave us some cause for concern, but Bryce Underwood for the second straight week ran the ball well, and Justice Haynes is something else, man.
It's starting to look like this Oklahoma team is pretty good as well.
Yes, so, right, beating Auburn.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a different discussion, beating Auburn, but refereeing is unbelievable. But that's a different discussion. But I think when you start to talk about this Michigan team, go back to when they went on this original march to their championship. They wanted to run the football, control the line of scrimmage, and that's what they were able to do. And sure, they're going to, try to take advantage of some explosive plays in the pass game, but it's about them running the football. If you can go out and control that and, just demoralize your opponent, nothing's worse than that, to be able to put yourself in that situation. And again, the success that they're having with interim coaches or their assistant coaches at the moment, that it's, they just continue to play. They just continue to elevate it, and Bryce is going to continue to get better, but along with the rest of the team. And then defensively, they're getting after the quarterback, causing some problems.
I would say so. They had 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. We talk about Illinois and kind of the opportunity that was ahead of them and that they didn't get it done. For Nebraska, I think it's even more accentuated by the fact they were at home.
Yes.
There was so much build-up to this game. We have talked about it ad nauseum, but it's hard not to talk about the fact they haven't beaten a ranked team in 9 years. And it was there for the taking. I mean, as you say, Michigan had an acting head coach, which how big a deal that is on game day, we could debate that, but their coach wasn't with them the whole week.
Yes.
And so there has to be some value in that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have head coaches, right?
Yes.
Like there's a reason you got them, okay? It's a Nebraska team that feels good about themselves, that got off to a solid start to the year. But I think some of the issues, the run defense wasn't great against Cincinnati. Let's be honest. Cincinnati went over 200 rushing yards on them. Then Michigan goes and goes for 286 on them. And then we've worried about this offensive line for Nebraska. Are they physical enough at the line of scrimmage? And to your point, I think the question was answered, no.
No, not yet. And you think about it, you talk about being able to stop the run. That's really discipline, everyone playing in their gaps. When you have long runs like that, there were some situations where the safeties weren't getting to the line of scrimmage quick enough to really close that gap, and then you gave the back a two-way go, and they were hitting home runs. You talk about 10-plus runs. Those are explosive plays in the run game, 10-plus, and they had quite a few of those. So Nebraska, I think, is still a very good football team, but when you're in those situations, the really good football teams, the championship football teams, find ways to pull these kinds of games out, and they just have not been able to get over the hump, not just this year, but consistently when you talk about ranked opponents.
Yeah, the one-score games, I mean, everyone certainly knows the numbers on that. It's ugly, frankly, and we won't delve too much into it other than to say, this is the rut that they find themselves in as a program. Are they better? I think there's no doubt that they're better, but at a certain point, you've got to win some of these games. The schedule is still really favorable for them. You got Michigan State at home coming up next. The first road game is against Maryland, which I think looks trickier than it did at the beginning of the year, and we'll get to the Terps in a moment. But there's no reason to think that Nebraska can't still be in that conversation. But this did feel like one of those games. Again, it was a game you circled and you said, we're going to know a little bit more of who they are, and we saw they certainly still have some
Two programs that we've just talked about are two programs that can't allow the defeats of last week to compound themselves this coming week.
Yeah, Nebraska's got to bounce back. Illinois' got to bounce back. No question about it. Oregon, they certainly didn't lose the week before in Evanston, but I don't think they felt great coming out of that game against Northwestern, particularly the run defense. And we saw Oregon State go on a long march early in this game. Kind of thought, man, I wonder whether Oregon just isn't as good defensively as we thought that they were. And then they totally shut the door. It's not a good Oregon State team, but still, they got to feel some confidence. And offensively, they were clicking again in a way that they really didn't against Northwestern.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we're seeing, and we can talk about coming in and playing Northwestern, which we did, but sometimes it's human nature, right? You're expecting to come in, and you may not rise to the level. And obviously, Northwestern was playing at a high level because they knew who the opponent was. But this is an Oregon team that continues to find ways to get better, right? You can have some struggles, some adversity, as they had early in a rivalry game, and then they came on and just took control of the football game. And that's really the sign of a really good football team. You talk about the depth that they have. Again, the quarterback play that they're getting, the run game, they're just clicking. And then you talk about from a defensive standpoint, just being able to go out and control the game. This is what championship teams look like. They are, they're going to have some times when things aren't going to be right, but we're going to be able to regroup and come out and play well, and that's what they're able to do.
I asked you about this in the postgame. I'm interested in kind of elaborating a little bit on the conversation. But they've got the huge game against Penn State next week. Yeah. Penn State had a bye week. They hadn't played as well as they wanted to the previous week. Again, the scoreboard might tell a different story, but they were pretty clear that they didn't feel like they had clicked as much as they wanted to offensively. Oregon felt the same way. You like being in Oregon's position better where they played rather than Penn State. Yeah. I guess the one thing I worry about is you played and you got to travel cross country.
Yeah, and listen, I think when we talk about programs and you go behind the curtain, Oregon is going to do an unbelievable job of traveling. They know what they're doing, the recovery process, all of those different things. So I don't worry so much about that. They'll make the necessary changements and adjustments that they need throughout the week to get there. But the fact that they've been in games where they struggled and they've been able to whether address those in the next quarter or the next game, we've seen them do that. They have on tape right now when they go click and they understand that they gave up a big run, they were able to address some of those issues. But when you talk about Penn State, and this is still a really good Penn State, we know they are. Defensively, they are off the charts. Can't wait to see that part of the matchup. But offensively, we have not necessarily seen them just dominate and throw those points up the way we believe they can against, in some situations, lesser talent that they were going against. They were some struggles there.
So we'll dive into Penn State a little bit later. We're going to look at all the teams that were on bye, and we're going to have a first look at that matchup because it's just too good to leave it until later in the week. So lots more to come. We'll run you through the rest of the weekend's action, including Maryland going on the road to Madison and picking up a dominant win. Plus, as I said, out of sight but not out of mind, what to expect this week from a handful of teams coming off a bye. This is Big Ten Today. Back on Big Ten Today, another outstanding outing for Jaden Mayava on Saturday night. He accounted for 5 touchdowns in USC's win over Michigan State. Mayava, the nation's pass efficiency leader, among the top half dozen nationally in every category you see here. He is averaging nearly 13 yards per passing attempt, which is far and away the best in the nation. As good as he is, the running game is special too. I mean, they got 289 yards on the ground against Michigan State. Yep. Howard, they have run for 15 touchdowns this year. To put that in perspective, they had 20 rushing touchdowns all of last year. This is a borderline impossible team to defend.
Yeah, when you think about having a quarterback as efficient as he is and the run game is working, what do you try to take away? You always want to try to take the run game, but you still have to take it away, and teams aren't able to do it to this point. So what they're doing offensively has really been remarkable. And I also think, it's when you talk about a play caller and his quarterback being on the same page, that's what we're watching happen here. And this is why it's important, because when you can start to call a series of plays and you know what your play caller is going to be thinking. We get to 2nd and 3, we get to 2nd and 4. Here are the things that we're trying. So now you're actually being able to set up and script plays versus defenses that you know what you're going to see because the play caller and the quarterback are on the same page. So when you have that, good things really happen when you have an efficient quarterback like this. They've got things rolling right now. They really are doing a great job.
This is the 24th time under Lincoln Riley they've scored 40 or more points. He's early in his 4th season there, so it's pretty remarkable. It's the most in the nation in that span. What I thought was incredible is they called 40 running plays and 26 pass plays. Now, some of those might have been a called pass where you end up in a scramble, but still, you run the ball 14 more times than you throw it in a Lincoln Riley offense. I think he understands, first of all, how talented particularly those 2 backs, Jordan and Sanders, are, but also how much that opens things up for the pass game. They didn't have Jacoby Lane in this game either, but their defense is also really good. It gave Michigan State fits. We talked about how they get after the quarterback. Give Michigan State some credit because it felt like this thing was going to get out of hand. USC had some penalties which really bit them and kept the drive going for Michigan State, which allowed them to narrow the gap a little bit, but they got this to a 7-point game. I feel like you can come out of this from Michigan State's point of view and still feel pretty good.
Absolutely, going on the road and playing the way they did. Absolutely, when you're playing this way, and I think Michigan State, there's still obviously a lot of room for them to continue to grow, and they'll be able to do that. But to go out and play the way they did in this particular game was outstanding. And I think one of the things I want to go back to Lincoln Riley in one of his comments. He was asked about calling it 40 times. It's about being physical was one of the words that he used to talk about it. And that didn't, I wasn't a miss for me when him saying that it's about being physical, because that's the one thing this team has been accused of, being more of a finesse team, getting out on the perimeter, doing things, not being able to hold up when it's time to run the ball when you need to. And that's what they're able to do right now. So you wonder, You want to call a game a certain way, and you mentioned that you're going to have some scrambles in there. But I think they've also understood that if we want to run and we want to go deep into this thing, you've got to be able to control the line of scrimmage. And they're showing that they can do that, and they are committed to doing that. And when you have a quarterback that can be as efficient, all of a sudden it's not going to be third and long situations. You now have an opportunity on third down to decide that if you want to run it when it's third and short. So that really opens things up for the play caller as well.
It's amazing to think they needed to fix the defense, and they did that really last year.
Right.
And then it's continued to play well, and then they needed to fix physicality, and the early indications would be that they have done that. So I would say if we were going to talk about surprises this weekend, to me the margin by which Indiana beat Illinois was shocking, frankly. The other surprise I would say, I don't know if it's a surprise to me that Maryland went into Wisconsin and won, but the way in which they dominated the game, I mean, they owned the line of scrimmage. The self-inflicted wounds from Wisconsin were mind-boggling. You have a punt and a field goal blocked.
Yes, it's a problem.
Same game. It is a problem. But let's accentuate the positive first. Maryland, there's been so much criticism about, well, they win in the non-conference, and you get to conference play, and they lay an egg.
Yeah.
They really, from the word go, were the better team here and were prepared and dominated the game.
And this is one of those teams that we said, or that I said, me specifically, I'm going to continue to move the goalpost, right? Okay, so now you've gotten this far. You've really gone on the road and were able to do this. And I think having a guy like Pep Hamilton really taking over the offense, and will Coach Loxley now have more of the CEO approach and understand what he needs to do with these players to try to press the right buttons, really has given him, I think, a different perspective on being a head coach this year. It'd be fascinating to talk with him later on in the season to see if that is actually true, because he's approached this thing a little bit differently. I thought coming out at the press conference and saying that he lost the team was something you don't hear. Right. You don't hear coaches talk about that. But he also explained why, and money had a lot to do with this. Who was getting paid, some of those things. And again, I go back to Pep Hamilton and the development of the young quarterback, who I think the upside is huge, and he's delivering already. So they're going to continue to play at that high level, but I want to see it, right? I don't want to see the penalties. You have those games where they'll come up with 8 or 9 penalties. But to do this on the road, to handle the business the way they did was really outstanding. And again, now we want what's next. Here, can we move it again? Because it was so much made about, okay, the schedule sets up well for them last year. This is their opportunity to jump into the mix.
Schedule sets up well again this year,
once
by the way.
again, exactly, right? So, but now you have to play each game. You have to play each game and address the issues and the challenges that you have. And listen, this was an outstanding victory for them going against the Badgers. The Badgers, on the other hand,
let's talk about the deal with Wisconsin. Yeah. And I do think it's fair to say quarterback injuries. Now they got both quarterbacks hurt in this game, Edwards and O'Neal. If you go back, Luke Fickell's tenure, I mean, it's probably been a handful of games they've actually had the guy who was supposed to be their starting quarterback playing. The offensive line is banged up. There's a lot of explanations. But at their core, I mean, it's not anywhere near.
Yeah. Where they want it to be.
Yeah.
Right? And that's, I think, the frustrating part, not only for the fans, but also, the coaching staff and players. They know that they should be better at this particular point. And right now, they just aren't. And injuries have a big part of that. We're seeing this year I think for the first time, and we'll talk about this a little later, the importance of making sure you have not only a healthy quarterback, but a quarterback that can change and be a difference maker for you each and every play.
And we talked about the change in philosophy, and they were going to go back to being physical and running the ball. I mean, they cannot line up and run the ball, or at least couldn't in this game. They had 61 rushing yards. And it just, again, they're trying to recapture that identity. They got a bye week.
Man, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yep.
Because you just can't say, oh, I just want to go be who we used to be. It's a little bit different.
Right.
It's different.
And they've got a brutal schedule. They go to Michigan next. Let's dive into a few of the other ones. It was Friday night, so it's a while ago, but Iowa went to Rutgers and won. And Iowa's pass game, really the offense in general, Howard,
yes.
like this is the offense that Iowa fans wanted to see.
It gets you excited when you just think about what they were able to do, and you know what they'll do defensively. So it's really fun to watch this team go out and play the way they did. They were just going up and down the field. But this also was a Rutgers team. You look at the way they played as well, but the way they threw the ball, they protected the quarterback.
How about this play, the pass to Dayton Howard?
Absolutely.
That is a perfect ball.
It's unreal. And then also using your legs to be able to make some plays. They really, this is what we've all wanted to see. I mean, that's exactly, at the end of the day, right? We saw an explosive offense, and the fans are excited about it, and now they want to see if they can recreate that once again.
They might be a little worried about the defense. I think that has a lot to do with Rutgers, but I would say it was pretty clear that Rutgers didn't have a ton of respect for Iowa's secondary. I mean, Nathan Kalakmanis was just a lot of these passes down the sideline. Again, he's got really good receivers. Really good receivers. And I think Rutgers fans have to feel good about that. They probably don't feel great about the defense, but quick thought on Rutgers.
Well, they'll be in a lot of these games because of what they can do in the pass game and the run game. So that's going to give them an opportunity. And sure, we're used to them being able to control games defensively. The one thing, they've got to get special teams. We rarely see them.
Yeah, Jay Patel missed a couple field goals.
We rarely see them not win the special teams battle. We always talk about you got to win 2 of the 3. And we always knew that the Rutgers is going to win special teams. They're going to be good there. Now it looks like if they can be good special teams and offense, they're going to put up a lot of points this year.
When you give up an opening kickoff for a touchdown, it's really hard to come back and win special teams. That sets a bad tone. Let's run through a couple quick non-conference results. Start with Washington. They win the Apple Cup against Washington State. They got the huge game against Ohio State this week. Man, this offense is fun. Damon Williams is incredible.
Yes, he is. He's outstanding. You think about a guy, and I've said Braxton Miller, and that's what I've talked about because he is so electric. He's not as physical, as big as a Braxton Miller, but he makes so many plays. And then you think about his ability in the passing game to really open things up. I really like this team, and they're going to be tough to stop. They get it done in all phases, and Ryan Walters over there coordinating that defense and not getting a lot of credit at this particular point, but I'm sure this defense is going to continue to play well the rest of the year.
Offensively, man, I mean, Damon Williams, 8 of his 16 completions went for more than 15 yards. He was their leading rusher, which Jonah Coleman's amazing. That shows you how dynamic he can be. They're really good. It's going to be an interesting game against Ohio State.
One last one. It's going to be real interesting.
Yeah.
I think his physical abilities, Williams' physical abilities to pass within the pocket at his height really shows his awareness and his anticipation throwing the ball vertically down the field. Outstanding.
Quick thought on Purdue. Went to South Bend. I think I said this on Saturday. I'll say it again. They got the bad timing award. You don't want to face a team that's as talented as Notre Dame that has started 0-2. You had the weather complications, but I do think offensively there's still some things to feel really good about.
There are a lot of things to feel good about when you look at this team, just the way they're playing. Listen, the last couple of years have been tough for them, but we talked about Coach Odom coming in and making things happen and really turning the culture around. He's done an amazing job, and I think offensively, again, they'll be in games because they can score points. They can continue to score points. The defense will come along at some point, and they'll continue to get better roster-wise as well. But just the discipline they're playing with right now gives them those opportunities.
Gave up more than 8.5 yards per play, to your point, on the defense. We'll see. Again, they get a bye week this week, which I think will be valuable for them, and then a pretty big home game against Illinois. Right? I mean, again, you look at Purdue and you say, can we figure out a way to get to 6? And
start thinking.
Yeah, certainly offensively, I think there's reason to believe we can. So they head into a bye. You got 5 teams returning to the field this week after a brief hiatus. What to expect from all of those teams as they return to action. Back on Big Ten today. Every team in the Big Ten with 2 byes this season. 5 teams had one of their byes last week. They included the 2 highest-ranked teams in the conference, number 1 Ohio State, as well as Penn State, which dropped a spot in the poll during its downtime. Minnesota, Northwestern, UCLA, all coming off losses, so they got a week to figure things out. Let's start with the Bucks. Last time we saw them, they beat Ohio University. Now, as we mentioned, they're heading to Washington. What do you see as kind of an assessment and priorities for Ohio State in that bye week?
One of the things that I'm looking at, they want to obviously continue to get better. That's what they want to do. And really, I think the passing game really started to come on, so I think they'll be fine. To me, really, it's about the defense and just the different looks that they're going to be able to give in this game. This is where they have to ultimately step up and be able to make the plays that they've had. This is a defense, when you look at them, schematically, they want matchups. They want to put their players in positions to take advantage of some of the things that another team can do as far as matching up your linebackers versus a tight end or your safety versus whoever it may be, backs out of the backfield. To me, that's where we're going to really see what this Ohio State team is up to and really the jump that they've made defensively. We know the personnel are outstanding on that side of the ball, and I really want to see what they're going to do when they're playing against a team that really is going to put them in a lot of conflicts as defensive players.
And Washington will do that, a team that's won 22 straight home games coming into this weekend. What about Penn State? This is a game they've had circled. Again, we're going to preview the Oregon game a little bit later. But so let's keep the focus on Penn State.
Yeah.
You're undefeated. You were ranked 2nd in the country. Now you're 3rd. But again, it wasn't based on anything you did necessarily on the field. Coming out of a bye week, they went down a spot. Again, mainly based on what Miami did. So what do you make of where Penn State is with an eye on, can you win these games that have eluded you?
That's the biggest thing, right? Answering those questions. And I think you have to be able in these situations to use every motivation possible, including sliding in the polls a little bit. You use that. Absolutely, you have to use it. But this is also the opportunity for them to address some questions, right? I'm still a big Drew Aller fan, but he's got to play big in these kind of
14th in the Big Ten in passing efficiency.
Gotta be 14th
big against that schedule.
And that's a problem, right? So you talk about not being able to come out and being as consistent as you would want to be. They've got to make those adjustments. We've seen some of the bigger plays downfield. We've seen some explosive plays. That's good. But the consistency is what we need to see out of this Penn State in these types of games. Because remember, they've told us, it's about winning a national championship for them this year. So now you have to go out and continue to play as if you are going to be one of those teams that are going to be in the middle of that conversation and make a deep run.
I continue to think maybe they're holding some stuff back offensively, but 58% red zone touchdown percentage, again, against a poor schedule.
Yeah.
They were 72% last year. Minnesota got a bye week. They had gone on the road against Cal. They kind of shot themselves in the foot. It was a game that was there for the taking. They made some mistakes down the stretch. Maybe a good week for them to have a bye.
Yeah.
Where's your focus with the Gophers?
I'll expect them to come out and continue to play well. To me, Drake Lindsey has to continue to develop. I think he's going to be an outstanding quarterback and has really proved that he can make all the throws and do the things and be the leader that you need him to be on this team. But I think also from a defensive standpoint, this was a team that was playing really well early on the defensive side of the ball. Getting back to doing some of those things and controlling the game that way, I think that'll be good. Anthony Smith coming up with huge plays. He has to be the difference maker on that defensive line and for that defense. Gave
up some big plays against Cal that could be a problem against Rutgers, who, as we said, is much better offensively.
And you think there might be a little...
Yeah, I mean, and then obviously those staffs.
Right, you got all of that.
You got all kinds of stuff going on there. Interesting, Darius Taylor was injured. Remember, he didn't play against Cal. He gets a week off, so that's valuable for him.
Back healthy.
Northwestern's an interesting one. I think you can make an argument that they probably felt okay coming out of the game against scoring. You want to win the game,
Yes.
and it would have been a monumental upset, but I think you can point to a few good things against the Ducks. This is a game you absolutely have to win.
You have to.
Against UCLA. So what are you watching from a Northwestern team that has run it okay, pass game, not anywhere near where they need it to be?
Well, we know what the pass game can be. We've seen that. They've seen it. So it's about taking care of the ball for this team. Take care of the football, because when they're in rhythm in their passing game, it looks good. The wide receivers got to find a way to create some space, create some openings, come up with some big plays, because they've shown that. Because this is a UCLA team. Keep in mind, they've made a coaching change, right? So they want to show that they can come out and play well. This is a game Northwestern has to be able to come out with a victory in.
Well, you were talking about UCLA, their opponent, transition week for them. Tim Skipper taking over for Deshaun Foster. So you get a hard reset. And a bye couldn't have come at a better time to do that. Probably not necessarily even a coincidence where, hey, this is a good week. If you feel you're going to make a change, Martin Jarman, maybe you just say, man, this is as good a week to do it as any. Skipper's got experience. He led Fresno State a year ago. How do you kind of circle the wagons and say, clean slate, new opportunity, conference play?
Well, to me, it's first of all finding out who's going to be all in, right? Who's going to be, and now I'm talking about the players, the roster. Who's going to be here? We need to make a decision about what we're going to do. So the season is not gone. It's not lost. There's still obviously a lot more games to be played for them. But now this is what we need to do. Coach is gone. We've made a change. What are we going to do? What are our expectations going to be moving forward? The expectations have to be, don't beat ourselves. Eliminate the penalties. Don't turn the football over. And as I like to say, kick. That's what you want to do as an offense. You want to be able to kick. That's going to be a punt, that's an extra point, or field goal. Anything else is unacceptable. So doing some of those things and really maybe just shrinking the game plan and getting to a place where you can start to feel good about yourself and have the success that you need. But penalties can't be a part of it.
Penalties were mind-boggling. And so many of them pre-snap penalties. I mean, you got to be able to get lined up.
It's discipline. It's discipline. So they'll have to address it, or hopefully address some of those issues and be able to move forward.
Need to get Nico going too. 112th in the nation in pass efficiency. They were 62nd.
A lot of pressure been on the young man.
No doubt. Got to figure out a way to stop the run too, which they have not done. And we know
it's a lot they need to get.
There's a lot to work on.
Yep.
Speaking of the Bruins and Cats, one of two games on our air on Saturday. That one kicks off at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. It follows that game we were talking about between Rutgers and Minnesota. That's a noon Eastern kick following a half-hour-long countdown to kickoff. All on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Our big stat may just blow your mind. Kudos to our producer, Jacob Ruffman, for discovering that the Big Ten currently has the top 5 players in the nation in pass efficiency. Jade Mayava, Fernando Mendoza, Julian Sand, Damon Williams, and Dante Moore. In addition, it has 4 others in the top 25. Now, last year, the conference finished with 3 of the top 7. Prior to that, over the previous 4 seasons, the only player who had finished a season in the top 5 in the nation in pass efficiency from the Big Ten was C.J. Stroud. So you'd had one player do it. Last year was a change, and I think part of that was the league changed last year. So I want an explanation as to why, and I think we probably have to start with the influx of the West Coast teams.
Yeah, I think the West Coast teams have obviously been a big part of that as well, but also the development of players. And we've seen, these were highly regarded players, a lot of them were 4- and 5-star players. And then the ones that weren't ranked highly, when they went into the transfer portal, they were high 4-star players. So you look at a guy like Mendoza, when you look at that. So I think that we know that in order to be able to make a run, you have to have a signal caller that can be a difference maker. That's very clear. But I think the way we've gotten to this point has been different. We've seen teams go into the transfer portal and be able to hit the right person. We've also seen teams go into the transfer portal, Oregon, and get a guy that is able to sit in Dante Moore in a situation where he went to UCLA.
A 5-star quarterback.
A 5-star, and then says, you know what? I'm going to go over here and I'm going to sit.
Yeah.
And I'm going to learn. and I'm going to understand what it is I need to do to be a better quarterback. So I think there's been several different situations, but I think it ultimately starts that these young men were really good quarterbacks to begin with, and they've been developed. And I think that's the biggest part of it. We've talked about coaches and how important they are, the head coaches, but these coordinators are also a big part of where they need to be. When you look at these rankings, I mean, this is unbelievable. And, you know, coming into this, you know how important those quarterbacks are, but to get them out there and develop them is the biggest key.
12 of the 18, either 4 or 5-star. Then you see three guys who were 4-star transfers in Mayava, Mendoza, and Gronowski. So then you're talking 15 of the 18 have been ranked either a 4 or a 5-star. Yeah. You can't overstate the importance of coaching. I mean, we've got some incredible quarterback coaches.
Yes.
Ryan Day has an incredible track record. You know, Lincoln Riley, Kurt Signetti has told us and has backed it up. Will Stein in conjunction with Dan Lanning. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Jed Fish has been a great quarterback coach. I'm going to leave people out because you can't help but to leave people out. But it points out how many great coaches we have at developing quarterbacks.
Right, and that's the key. And not only to develop them and keep them is the biggest part, and that's one of the biggest challenges and one of the things that these programs have been able to do. Retaining their own players has been a big part of it.
And that speaks to resources, and we know the Big Ten's got a lot of resources.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's how you retain your players. So pretty interesting. It'll be fun to chart that throughout the course of the year. Well, up next, Howard and I just cannot resist. We're going to take a look ahead to Saturday night's massive whiteout showdown in Happy Valley. Stick around. It is time to go around the Big Ten, starting with the 5th-ranked Indiana men's soccer team, which bounced back from an upset loss to Michigan last week with a 4-1 win Friday at Penn State. Palmer Alt led the way with a hat trick, the first of his career. You can see the Hoosiers on our air tomorrow when they take on Michigan State, 6 p.m. Eastern. The number 1 ranked Nebraska volleyball team improved to 10-0 over the weekend as they completed non-conference play with a sweep of Arizona. The Huskers begin their conference slate Wednesday against Michigan, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Back to football as we wrap things up. The big board highlighting an excellent week ahead. Already mentioned our 2 games. Big noon will be in Champaign, a ranked matchup between the Trojans and Illini. Ohio State, Washington, Indiana, Iowa, both with early CFP implications. And then the big one in primetime, number 6 Oregon, number 3 Penn State, whiteout crowd in Happy Valley. Howard, I believe we're going to talk about this a little bit as the week develops, but it was irresistible to at least give it a first brush here on the Monday show. So the biggest things that jump out at you as you think about this matchup?
Yeah, well, I think about Penn State from an offensive standpoint. They've got to be explosive, trying to figure that part out. I really like what Penn State is doing defensively. This is a defensive line that gets after 2 defensive ends inside, defensive tackles that can make it tough on quarterbacks. So how is that matchup going to play out? We've talked about this Penn State from an offense. Have they been holding things back, or are they just not executing? You want to see how they're going to be able to handle that. This is going to be one of those games, right, that it's about Penn State being able to we talk about them taking that next step. This is a big step for them to be able to take on this opponent and come out of this one with a W. This will be we'll know a lot about both of these teams, but in saying that, I think both teams still are in control of where they want to go. Whoever eventually loses this still is in control, but both obviously would want to win this one.
Last year's evidence of that, no question. Again, this was the Big Ten championship game last year. It was a really good game. One thing that really interests me is if we've seen one crack with Oregon in that facade or in you know, kind of a weakness so far this year, it was that game against Northwestern and the run game. Penn State hasn't run it as well as I might have thought that they would. I mean, I don't think Nicholas Singleton's had a great year, although he's gotten in the end zone a ton. Do you see that as the biggest advantage potentially for Penn State?
I see the advantage of Penn State of the backs out of the backfield.
Okay.
We saw them really have a great deal of success with that last year, running the vertical routes versus linebackers. That's where I think the game can be a difference maker in this matchup.
And for the challenges we've talked about Penn State having offensively, defense has been really good.
Right, really good.
It's been excellent. So
It's been good for like 5-6 years under new coordinators. They just play defense up there, man.
They do. It's going to be a massive challenge for the Ducks. It's going to be a fabulous game. We'll be talking about it all week here on the Big Ten Network.